there's nothing better as a producer than hearing that an audience member or members or, thousands of them or hundreds of thousands of them have been moved by a piece of content. And I think that's certainly why Morgan and I make film. And if there's any way to help us make our decisions better and make our content hit at the heart of humanity in a better way, then we're gonna mine for that data.
This is Creative Disruption, the intersection where entertainment, data, and creativity meet. Here's your hosts, Ricky Ray Butler and Derral Eves.
And welcome back to the Creative Disruption Podcast, where we talk about everything that's actually disrupting the industry and the people that are causing that disruption. And I'm joined by my friend and brother, Ricky Ray Butler. How you doing, Ricky?
Doing fantastic. How you doing, Derral?
I am so excited for today because, we've been talking about this guest for a very long time, and I couldn't wait to get her actually on. Do you want to do a quick intro?
Yes. We are so fortunate and lucky to have Lori McCreary with us today. Lori is someone in this industry that I really respect and look up to. She's just been a game changer. And one thing that's really interesting about Lori is that she has a computer science background. And so her perspective with entertainment and technology and data is very interesting, but she's also produced some of, amazing shows, from Madame Secretary to Story of God, which was the highest rated show by National Geographic. And then also worked with Morgan Freeman on Invictus. And she's the co-founder of Revelations Productions, which she co-founded with Morgan Freeman, I believe, in 1996. Yeah, and so Lori's very involved with the PGA. She's done a lot for this industry, and Hollywood Reporter even named her as one of the top, most influential women in Hollywood. And so, Lori, thank you so much for making time for us and being on this program.
Thank you, Ricky. That's a great introduction. I appreciate it. And nice.
I was just going to check to see if it was okay, if that intro was good enough for you. No, I'm excited for a couple reasons. And when Ricky first off was saying, hey, Lori might be a possibility coming on the podcast, I'm like, oh yes, because he's mentioned some of the stuff that you kind of look at Hollywood a little bit differently, and just because of your role and just because of your background. Would you mind just kind of giving us a synopsis of how you got started and up to today? And we can kind of jump into very specific questions on, what's really disrupting the industry right now.
Sure. Well, I come at Hollywood kind of circuitously through the tech industry. And I started in theater when I was 8 years old. And I thought when I got into college, what I wanted to do was own my own theater. And they were computerizing the lights and the sound system. So I thought, I should just go get a computer science degree. So I got a computer science degree.
Okay, first off, who does that? Oh, hey. I mean, AV for theater. Who does that?
It turned out really well for me, because what I realized is I was one of the few people that was straddling both at UCLA, both schools. And they told me when I first went that I could make my own major. So I basically wrote a paper about how the technology industry was going to affect the entertainment industry and why I wanted to do my major in that. And they looked at me and said, what? No, you got to pick one. They're different on different sides of campus. You either have to do engineering or you have to do theater. And they said, and we think you should do theater. And I was like, oh, really? Okay, I guess I'm going to go to the engineering school and get a computer science degree. And I wish I had that paper, because I really thought that with the advent of the new things in tech, that it would really help us with storytelling and change our business. But what I ended up doing was starting a software company with two individuals for legal software. And I was a coder, and I was a really good coder. So they brought me in, and I took a detour and started writing applications for lawyers. And while I was in college, we had 22 employees, and I was running this technology company. And but I woke up one day and I was like, what am I doing? Do I want my tombstone to say, Lori helped lawyers bill people? And I had an epiphany. I did. I was like, I love doing it. I love coding. But I thought, I really want to tell stories that change people's lives. And so I literally left. I kept my stock, which turned out to be really good about 10 years ago when they sold, and decided what I really wanted to do was get into storytelling. And so I went back, saw a bunch of theater, And my first film was a play that I saw in London with a lawyer friend of mine, and we decided we needed to make it into a film. And so I come to, as a producer, with an entirely different view of technology and what it can do for our industry. And I'm usually thinking a little ahead, like our small software company back then was the first to hook up a little handheld computer to a copier before copiers were digitized. So I'm always kind of trying to think of how technology can help us in our businesses. And that's how I approach the entertainment industry as well. So
I'm fascinated by this. First off, that you could write your own, hey, I want to do my own major, and they had you pick. But and if you ever find that document, I think the world needs to see that for sure. Because I think a lot of universities could use that as a point of understanding where things are converging, right? Mm-hmm. But taking the approach of that you're really passionate about theater, you're really passionate about the tech side, and the merging of that, over the course of you being in school, what was the most dramatic shift that has been done in the industry, technology-wise, that you're like, that makes sense, or, oh, we should have done this sooner?
Well, boy, there's a few dramatic shifts. The first being time shifting watching. I think that's changed the audience viewing, which also changes what we think about when we're making film and TV. The digital cameras, I was pushing that rock up a hill for a really long time, with a lot of people really resistant to saying digital will never be as good as film. And then recently, the whole online distribution of film and TV day and date around the world. And back in 2005, Morgan and I started a company with Intel called Clickstar, which was the precursor basically to streaming services. And our thought back then, which now has come true, was we have to get ahead of the technology companies coming in and starting to run our business. Because as content creators, if we own it, if we own the data, we can drive where the business is going. And we tried to get the industry to see that this is what was happening. And our business is so great because it has all this great culture and all this great history. Sometimes it also is the thing that holds us back. They didn't want to take things out of theaters too soon. They didn't want to see the industry kind of change. And so there was a resistance to it. And the things that I said back then, which was, I don't want films and TV to go the way of software. When I was a software engineer, we spent thousands of hours developing code. And then what would happen is IBM or somebody would come in and say, hey, you get 10 or 100 free pieces of software with this big computer. And they became the thing to sell the other thing. And I was afraid back then in 2005, I used that example, that a big tech company would use our content, get 100 free films and buy this computer or buy this widget for your house or buy whatever. And unfortunately, I think that's what has happened, is that the owners of the companies that are out there are pulling people in, and it's starting to erode somehow the belief that content is valuable, that film and television content has a bigger value than just signing a subscription. That's a big thing.
I think that's a point of discussion, because I think this is something that Ricky and I are both really passionate about. Is it the quantity of, okay, you can have a new movie every week and all you got to do is join our service, or we have this or that. Is it the quantity, or is it quality? And I truly do believe that there will always be quality, because you have some amazing creators and they're willing to put the money behind their vision and have the effort of it. But I do believe that we're being saturated right now with just performing content, and people are okay with it just because they have that Netflix subscription or whatever, and they're like, oh, okay, I can endure this, even though that I don't think anyone should endure it, But I don't know, Ricky, what's your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think it really all comes down to the content, and I'm very nuanced in particular of like what I like to watch. And there's some pieces of content that have come out where I don't think it has gotten the attention it deserves. Like, for example, I don't know if you've both heard of the series 000. It's probably one of the most expensive production, budgets of 2020. It's on Amazon Prime. It's basically, so I love gangster movies and gangster shows. It's basically how the Mexican cartel does work with the Italian mob in Italy, and how this American broker helps with all of this. It's a fascinating, expensive production. And it's just going to be one of those things I think is going to have a long tail effect. Maybe it's not the front of the line of what's being promoted, but it's just going to add, to the high quality portfolio that Amazon's building. And I think those shows are similar to that on Netflix, Disney, across the board. So one thing that's also happening is I think, humans and the viewers are in the position to really truly decide what will succeed and what will not. And so distributors and these streaming platforms are going to have to be a lot more data driven in the future. What do you think is the next wave, with your technology background and also your successful background in producing, what is the next wave of streaming and content?
That's a great question. I think we're probably in the midst of the great thing about the fact that now that the studios and the entertainment industry has jumped on, going on from my last comment about technology taking over, is that the content creators are now having their own streaming services, which is really great. And there's a lot more competition. For a few months there, it was a little nerve-wracking because I thought that we were going to have fewer and fewer places to sell our content. So as content creators, I think it leaves a great opportunity. And I think what's going to happen is when you democratize filmmaking and storytelling, which is basically what digital cameras and the advent of streaming networks did, you can white label a streaming platform and put out your own content, which is really great. But as you said, there's just so much content. Then how does an audience find it? I think that one thing that's trending now are niches, like micro niches. But if you get a micro niche that is in every single country, it becomes its own audience. And so there will be more and more niche market content that's out. More and more indigenous from the country it's in that comes out to us, like you've seen at the Academy Awards and the Golden Globes, some non-English speaking international films coming out where people are saying, oh, this is a great movie. And we're going to be exposed to a lot more content than we would have had it taken longer. I think with what's happened with us all in lockdown, we've been able to consume more content, and also people are more apt to watch things on streamers than going out to the theaters right now. So I think that's all contributed.
Yeah, it's really exciting, this decentralization that you're talking about. And there's a lot of assumptions that we have from old data and archaic ways of saying, oh, this is going to be consolidated. Someone's going to control all of this. And I think there's going to be something different than consolidation. I think it's called innovation. I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be new infrastructures, new technology that's going to make it so we can continue to go down this trend. As I referenced earlier, today with you, Lori, that, Derral and I have worked on, a production that was very niche for a specific community that wanted better content, and it ended up being very successful. That shows that it's a faith-based production. We're seeing this the tip of the iceberg. I think this is going to be much bigger. It's going to become much more decentralized, and it's probably, as you just said, going to be way more localized. Everything right now is very global when it comes to video and streaming. But I agree with you that we don't even know what it's going to look like when this sophistication with tech and with production equipment gets even more distributed. What's going to happen on the local level? There's going to be a lot of localized productions that are probably going to be self-sustained because people want something that speaks to them.
I completely agree. And it's so exciting, the opportunities for new producers coming up. They can do something that they know, because I think the best productions come from people who have a passion for what they're telling. And if you're telling your stories from the place that you grew up in or where your family's from, we're going to get some really amazing content. And it's a really exciting time for producers.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting is it's the monetization, right? Like you got to look at how are we going to distribute it? How are we going to monetize it? And I think there's more creators coming into the space that want to own it. They don't want to just give up all rights because they want to own that community. They want to own that licensing. They want to own that distribution. And I think this is where it gets fascinating, because there's new opportunities for businesses to come in when they have this new mindset. And I think, way back when in 2005, when YouTube started, I don't think people realized how much of a disruption that actually was going to cause in the entertainment world. But it became pretty clear immediately in music, in the licensing of music, and then eventually movies. But these new creators that are integrated with technology and understand all these aspects don't necessarily need these huge budgets to pull something off, but they need an adequate budget. And the adequate budget, I see content that, might be for tens of millions of dollars that feel like hundreds of $1 million type of production because of the technology that they're able to use now, and more the power behind that. And so I'm really interested to see these new creators coming into the space of all these new toys that they can use to bring the cost down, and then also new ways to distribute it, which they can own more of the money and of the IP and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Derral. And I think that with that, whenever blockchain becomes ubiquitous, we will, as content creators, will be able to track our own content, make sure it's registered, and make sure that it doesn't go out, into the world without us seeing the revenues. Right now, it's difficult for producers because the old paradigm was that if you made a great film, you got keyed onto box office. If you were a gross player, you knew exactly what you were going to get on the tail end of your revenues and of your profit. And right now, it's really difficult for producers to really hang on to anything. If you could sell a movie that is a huge hit and gets 10 million subs for whoever you're selling it to, and you might not get paid on that. You might just say, oh, I made a great movie that a lot of people are watching. And so we've got to kind of connect the creators and content makers back with the revenue chain and make sure that that everyone along that chain is ticking up a little bit.
So let's talk blockchains, because I think the blockchain is the only way. I mean, it is the future of how to get that credit and attribution back, right? Yeah. So how do you envision that, like, in the next couple of years? Do you feel like it will take over, on some platforms, and then those creators will kind of gravitate to that because then they can get attribution and the monetization that comes to that?
I think that someone's going to have to prove it. I think someone's going to have to do a proof of concept and spend a boatload of money developing a system, developing software. I mean, I feel like I'm back in 2005. We did it in 2005 when there was no, white label product to stream services. We basically hired a bunch of engineers and built our own. It takes a lot of money now to go out and build a blockchain platform that can do distribution for films. But the first person who does it and then gets, 10 filmmakers, top filmmakers, to distribute their films that way, and they see the revenue coming in directly, I think our business, the great thing about the entertainment business and the bad thing about the entertainment business is, once there's a business model that's proven, everyone will jump into it. It might take them a couple years, but then everyone does it. You see that with Disney Plus and Paramount Plus. Everyone's jumping in, which I'm really happy about. It's taken, in my estimation, we're in 2021, so it's a few years late for my 2000 and really early 2005 push. But I feel like now, if blockchain came out, if someone took the bull by the horn and just did it, that our industry would quickly fall into line, 3, 4, 5 years later.
Yeah, that right there, this is so exciting to hear, from you, Lori. Blockchain, I remember just discussing this topic, just in internal meetings, and feeling like a crazy person, saying that, blockchain is going to be the future of entertainment. And even though it excites me, but it also triggers me that we're bringing this up, because I just, sold all my Bitcoin in December, and it was my third biggest mistake of selling Bitcoin.
Ricky, what were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking I wanted to be very disciplined in my investments. So I came out on top, but, obviously could have done much better.
You cashed out. That's good.
Yeah. But with that said, this is something, that Derral and I have spoken about, and I have an internal team it's an innovation team where we have our top engineers and top data scientists, where we're trying to predict what's going to happen in the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And this is something that, we are already trying to like innovate is like, okay, how can we leverage blockchain to better scale the empowerment of artists and content creators? And there's going to be a lot of things that are happening there. And you're right. There's going to have to be one group or individual that proves it out when it comes to content. Because there's like DLive, there's a lot of different platforms that are like testing this, but I don't think anyone has made a home run yet. But it's going to be one of those things that I think really will protect the creator and also make it so, they can be a lot more involved in the monetization of the content that they create. And I think it's going to just create even a higher scale of decentralization that's accompanied with monetization. Now,
Ricky, before you jump on, it's really important context-wise. Sometimes industries are forced to go in a path that they're resisting right now. And this last year, because of the pandemic and COVID, like there wasn't the ways to bring in money like it normally does. Like contracts had to be adjusted because there was assumptions of all the things that was going to happen was no longer happening. And so I think we're at a very pivotal point. There might be people listening to this podcast or whatever are going to be making these decisions to test and to try, because what's working is now I truly do believe the way the old distribution model and the old way of making money has been knocked at and capped at the knees. And now we have to be more open of the long-term strategy, which is how do you do re-releases and how do you really leverage the IP in unique ways that we aren't necessarily doing before, because it was more about, okay, what's that next project? What's the next project, instead of really capitalizing on that?
Well, it's about empowering communities, individuals, and creators, not third-party orgs that only help with the monetization and that only care about profit. It's just going to individualize everything that we do. And I'll make a bold prediction that Uber and Lyft will go out of business eventually if they don't figure out how to better what they do with blockchain. Whoever comes out with a way that better empowers both users and drivers is going to be that next level of innovation. And so when it comes to like technology, I think the next wave of technology is taking very manual, tedious things and being able to streamline and scale them. And you're going to see that with deep learning and with AI, as well as when it comes to infrastructure like blockchain. It's going to be a really exciting time, but even more exciting for entertainment, because I think there's a lot of people out there that thinks, okay, this is way too saturated, way too much going on. But what's happening is there's a refinement. It's putting a lot of data out there, then it's going to make it so we all understand which data and which content is truly adored and loved. And it's going to help us optimize how we have just as much quantity, but with higher quality.
I think the powers that be are willing to test things now because they know there's not necessarily the old way of doing things. I look at HBO Max as one of the forerunners of that, regardless of what it is. I think their marketing strategy is just off the chain. Especially when, something actually got posted early. Oh, yeah, right. Like that's really what's happening. But they get the internet to start talking about it. And then also, what is the life expectancy of a new subscriber and how much momentum is actually coming into it? And what they were able to do in a few months is what other places took years to come and do. And I think it's just more about, hey, the dollar amount and quantity. And then two, incentivizing the creators that actually get the eyeballs so that there's more ability for them to scale and make money. I look at Adam Sandler, for example, and the Happy Madison productions of, like, even though I think his shows are pretty funny and it's great, but to have the worst movie ever made be the top viewed video or top viewed movie ever watched on Netflix in 2020 is an indicator that not amazing content is there, but it's about that content creator, but also the ecosystem that they built, the fan base that is built. And I think that's the value that Amazon or HBO Max or Netflix is going to have to attract. And those types of contracts will have to be different. And I think to easily introduce a blockchain model isn't necessarily unrealistic for someone like that to do that. Now, it's, I think that's where it's going to be interesting to watch.
I would agree with you, Derral. I think that the smartest in our business are amongst those in the studios that they've now come out with their plus version, which is their streaming versions. And I know that there are really smart people in our business. And I also think that if they would reach out to the producing community, because producers are the ones who are really getting hit in this new world where we're not a union, we don't have collective bargaining power. We basically go in and we're entrepreneurs. Every time we make a new, you know this, Ricky, every time you make a new project, you're like fighting for your piece of it. And so if there was something that was introduced from one of the big streamers that had blockchain that would allow producers and talent and directors and everyone down the line, even to the crew, to get a little piece of it, it'll be a huge game changer. And I think that that's the way anybody out there who wants to do that, I'm definitely interested in talking about it.
Yeah, it's so interesting, you know, in talking to, you know, a lot of the leadership at the PGA, or Producers Guild of America, they're so hungry for innovation. It's so amazing to see such a big group that's been around for a while that is so open to entrepreneurship and innovation, where you talk to like Susan and Vance and they're like, yes, when you see things evolving in this area, please come to us and tell us about this. And I know that you've been a part of a lot of the disruption with the PGA on monitoring, you know, new areas. And let's talk about one area where we all got disrupted. And that was with COVID and COVID-19 and with quarantine, et cetera. You know, one of our businesses is a product placement business where our brands are 95% of the content of the top major streaming services and across a lot of television. And we were nervous when all the production shut down. I think it was between like 4-6 months. And there was a lot that was going down, and our team was forced to innovate every way possible. And we were able to, you know, have a great bounce back with the industry. But with that said, I know that you're over the task force at the PGA around COVID-19. I would love to hear some insight of, you know, innovations that you found that help with this disruption.
It's so interesting because the day we shut down in California, especially, we were on the phone, Susan Sprung, the national executive director, and Lucy and Gail, the presidents, talking about how do we get everyone back to work, knowing that we're literally just trying to figure out how to, you know, run our own businesses remotely. And one of the things we really are committed to at the PGA is safety on sets. So this was just an extension of what the Producers Guild already puts out in terms of safety. And so we knew that there were going to be protocols coming down from AMPTP and the unions, but we also knew that we were going to need to publish something that was more in producer language so that we knew exactly like the practical applications of these rules and regulations and all of the data coming from CDC and epidemiologists. So we spent weeks and weeks, if not 3 months, putting together these protocols culled from lots of different sources that we could publish for the producers. And the great thing about our industry, I don't know if you've seen the reports from AMPTP, but our infection rate on productions across the country were less than 0.25%.
Amazing.
When the rest of the country was 10 to 20%. Sometimes 8%. But
should we plan on you running for president? Sorry, not to get political.
No, but less than 0.25%. And look, we're a little bit, we're not like, we can control our sets a little more than some other businesses, but there are so many great things that we can do. I mean, just doing things like airing out spaces every hour was huge in the beginning when we didn't really know that it was how it was transmitted. And now we're seeing that was one of the big things that our business did that helped stop the spread on our sets, which is airing out, getting HEPA filters, getting the right filters, and airing everything out every week. So that to us was a big win from our industry.
That is a huge win, and it's something that positively made an impact on our businesses, big time. Yeah. No, thank you so much for innovating and figuring all that out. Derral, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's been a challenge. I mean, we just barely got, we just wrapped season 2 and we're in post-production now of The Chosen. And it was, number one, very costly to do all those COVID tests of everyone that was coming on and going through that. And luckily we only had 2 isolated cases, you know, for the amount of people that we've had.
Right.
Yeah, which is great. But I think what it did was it was creating new problems for production that they've never had to deal with before. Like there's like to put on a TV series and produce a TV show and produce a movie. There's all these complications, and then you add something even above and beyond that no one knows what they're talking about. And luckily, you know, we had a lot of people with SAG and, you know, even with PGA that was like giving some really good, here's some great standards that helped us get through it. Like we couldn't shut down. We had to do it. It cost so much more money to do it. But if we would have delayed it, it would have cost us a lot of money. And so it's like, how do we do it? And we actually had something happen where we were trying to get some extras on for this main scene of season 2. And it was logistically a nightmare. We actually had to get an external company helping us do it, but because we had, okay, hold up now, 2,300 people that was extras coming in, and they all had to be COVID tested before they got there. And then they had to be quarantined and then did it again. And then we did it right. You know, just this whole thing where they stayed in their car, they did the rapid test to go in. But we only had to turn away a couple cars because if someone was, was diagnosed with COVID or they had some traces of it, they couldn't be in it. But we were able to pull it off. And I was shocked because TMZ reached out, and I never seen TMZ ever do a positive piece. But that was the first positive piece I've ever seen on TMZ. Wow. Is they were blown away at how we were able to do it. And I think it was, the higher power that I believe in was involved with this, but also the protocol that was set up and knowing how to manage it and not just ignore it. Right. Because there's just no way we could even do that. And, you know, luckily we only had a couple cases go through that and it didn't shut down production. We had a couple scares, but it didn't shut down production. And we were able to go through that process. And I think the new normal now is, okay, this is not going to go away just because the pandemic's, you know, there's a vaccine and stuff. What we need to do is like figure out people's safety and health as we're coming into it. And I'll be honest with you, it's going to be down to technology because we have it where it was like app driven, you know, you send your tests in, and then also apps that when someone's on the clock that they're not being exposed to other people in there. And I think without that, I think it would have been very difficult to pull off the show that we did and produce during, you know, the pandemic.
Well, congratulations on only 2 close calls. That's fantastic. And that's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tests you were doing just on those extras.
It was, well, just shy of $1 million, but yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was going to say they're like average is $100 a test right now. And we're hearing anywhere from 20 to 30% on top of your production costs is what you have to budget for COVID related expenses. It gets a little crazy. And I hate to say it, but we're going to be in PPE at least, maybe not with the same amount of testing through 2022. I don't think we're going to get out of having people on set in zones because we're not going to have herd immunity in the country or on our sets for a long time. And I think that we need to protect those who, for us from transmitting something that we don't know if we may be carrying.
Well, and I think this is where production is going to shift. And there's a couple technologies that I'm really excited about. One is you have ILM, basically partnering with Epic Games, and they have these new sets that you can go in, and it's basically an LED wall all the way around 360, and that you have game rendering engines in there, and then they're able in real time to see a lot of the stuff. Yes, there's a lot of prep work that's going on, but this is the cool thing about where technology can go, where you can have a programmer in Nigeria programming for the stuff that's being shot there. So like a lot of people can remote in and do the set design, and if they don't like it, they can literally move it within seconds. Instead of, you know, trying to redress it and go through that and new scouting locations. And I think even though that not every style of production's there, I think people are going to be a lot more creative of how can we have people remote in and do certain different things around the world instead of being localized in one area.
We're doing that right now on a television production where Morgan is basically doing history's greatest escape. So he's walking through the escape route of famous prison escapes and walking you through it, interviewing people, and it's all going to be done in this virtual 3D.
I love it.
Real time, and it is again, Ricky. I'm sure if I knew you 15 years ago, we would have been talking about this 15 years ago with machinima and all of these things where people were saying, why can't we do it if video games can do it? But the idea of having a real-time rendering of a background as a character moves and able to track it to the character's move, as opposed to telling the actor you have to move this way because we've created this world for you, is a game changer in our business, 100% for sure.
For sure. I think innovation will only appear when it's needed. And
well, if there's ever a time, we need it now more than ever.
100%. Did you see that stat that just came out? I believe it's close to 20% of Facebook employees are using VR. Now, we've been talking about VR for so long, and there's been so much hype around VR. And I still think the technology that's out there is way too clunky for the end consumer. And by the way, I love Oculus. I use the Oculus. It's wonderful.
I'm literally still waiting for your friend request. I've been requesting your friendship, and you've denied me every single time.
I already told you, Derral, and I've said it on this program, but I don't want to do that tap dancing game with you. When I have time, I'll do it, but I have to prioritize my life in other areas. I know that you're #1 rated, on that game, and congratulations. Now, I will challenge you on that on one of these weekends, I promise. So, and I will accept your friend request. With that said, right now, there's a practicality that's now being seen of like, okay, we do need a better connect digitally. Zoom is not the answer for everything. And it's amazing to now see that, okay, there's a lot of opportunity, not just when it comes to our own personal entertainment, because it's a little too expensive for the end consumer for everyone to have, a VR headset. However, when it comes to businesses and when it comes to productions, we can now leverage this technology and figure out, okay, this will help us streamline and optimize what we're doing so we don't have to slow down when we have to be quarantined or if we can't be together as often. And that's just really exciting. And so even with our own business at Ben Group, we're now realizing, some of the ideas and the loon shots that we were trying to do a couple of years ago were taking us in the right direction. But now we're saying, whoa, for us to truly achieve, for example, automation when it comes to working with celebrities and influencers, or when doing product placement with there's now over 1,000 Hollywoods out there. Now that the scale is there and we are forced to innovate, we've realized, whoa, we were looking at this wrong. And now that we need this right now today, we have to reprioritize everything that we do based on the technology that we're building, as well as how we look at data differently. So it's really exciting. And Lori, you're someone that I feel like has been a champion for technology. You've always been very innovative. Everyone that I know that knows you praises you of being this thought leader out there. Where do you see, for example, something like VR coming in? Obviously you shared, applications of where you're seeing it being effective, but when is it going to be something that's necessary for the end consumer or for the viewers?
That's a good question. I think that you're right in that the cost of having to wear something on your face becomes the block right now. I think that when we can do something that isn't require that you have to buy new equipment that is a singular experience. Part of content storytelling is kind of having your group watch things together and see things together. So I think once we can get rid of whatever we're going to have to throw on our eyes to see something will be helpful. I also think that it's really important for us to see that we're educating a huge mass of people on Zoom right now. With people put up their own backgrounds. People put up the AR that goes in front of you. You can have crazy things all over. This, I think, we cannot underestimate the imagination of people that have either our age that are looking at this and saying, oh, maybe I can do this, or the kids coming up that are going to see it as just normal, as part of what we do. And so I feel like this, unfortunately, as we've been locked down, we've done this kind of re-education. Derral was talking earlier about contracts, having to have everything, in the cloud and accessible by everyone, which blockchain could help. So I think that what it's doing is it's priming the world, but our industry especially, to adopt more quickly. So these virtual backgrounds are helping us because you don't have to then travel your actors to the same place. They can actually be acting together in an environment without being close to each other. And I think that it necessitates us taking advantage of this time, especially as people who think we see a little bit in the future, to help everyone else see into the future, so that we can start getting products to help us build these kind of stories that take advantage of all the great technology that's been there, but maybe hasn't been adopted into our industry as quickly as we would have all loved.
Sure. Well, and I think it's interesting because, if you would have asked anyone, or I'd say in our industry, in the entertainment industry, how old school or how archaic the entertainment industry was like 10 years ago, everyone would be like, yeah, it's always worked a certain way. We're going to keep working in this, way. But today we're now seeing leaps and bounds, and that it's one of the industries that's leading innovation. And I think the reason why is because we depend so much more on unstructured data, on imaging, visuals, film, audio, big groups of text. And so we need to understand the context around this type of data. It can't be in a black box anymore. And it can't be from the gut, and it can't be through assumptions or, random ideas. I mean, we have to learn how to be data-driven in a different way. And that's where AI and deep learning is going to really help us have technology that learns like a human, but can scale like a machine. And so it's really exciting because every angle and every area of entertainment is forced to figure out how to innovate, including the talent. Actors realize that they need to start communicating and engaging and building their communities and their audiences in order to maintain relevance and clout, but also to understand how they need to be and what they should be doing differently for them to be data-driven. And so it's a really exciting time. And, I think all three of us have been very obsessing over all of this for a while, but it's here. And now it's the opportunities is for anyone that wants to get involved, anyone that wants to be in entertainment, as long as you can contribute something with tech, innovation, or with data, you will be able to be a part of this industry, and you can make a huge difference because it's become so democratized.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, and this is what I've seen just with the advent of YouTube and these new creators coming in, it's like the more information you can give them on how well something performs outside of revenue, they can make adjustments. And I work with some of the biggest creators on the planet, and I can tell you retention levels is like the biggest thing. Oh, my audience didn't like this when I did this. Like those types of calls need to go translate back to creators, because then we're going to actually create content that engages. And I think that there's old school creators that says, I'm going to do it my way. I won't go throw anybody into the bus on this one. But like, there's people like, I will disavow everything that's been done in the past on the data that things that work for this specific audience, and we'll push it aside because I'm the creator of this. And I think now we're going to be more having more producers and creators that are more data conscious, where they realize, yeah, that's really good, but we can actually get them more enthralled if we did these types of elements in the writing or the character development or the progression of the story here that makes this fan group just go bananas. And I think that I think Netflix has been wise to give data back to the creators. I think that these new platforms that come on, I think the ones with the blockchain, I think that you could be monetized differently based off of retention. That will encourage more creators to create content that's within their own designs, but knowing how it will be translated out to that end viewer. And I think that's where it's going to elevate content. We've seen it on YouTube, and it's going to continue to go across the board with this new type of creator.
I agree with you. I think that part of our job as communicators is to help the content creators, producers, directors understand that this data is different than audience survey data. That's different than when we used to go in and we used to get the audience and they'd check boxes on, would you recommend this to your or what was your least favorite scene? That's one of my favorites. Like if 80% of the people thought it was their least favorite scene, sometimes the studio would say, let's get rid of it. But it was the pivotal scene. It was their least favorite scene because it was, pissed them off, but it was part of the whole experiment of the story. Like if you got that scene out, it doesn't work. The whole movie doesn't work. So I think that if we can help content creators see that this data, that they don't have to take it wholesale, but it will inform their next, whatever the next episode is or the next film that they do. Like, oh, this is something that, either everyone tuned out after 7 minutes. Why? We don't know. We got to look into deeper. And also, I think that it also helps us understand how to innovate, because, if you can see data and have AI that's giving you trends, then you can innovate into it as opposed to sit back and think, oh gosh, what am I doing? This is so much data, I can't handle it. So I think that there are also going to be a need for people to translate data for content creators, because
But that's where the data scientists will come in. I think every creator is going to have a data scientist, because if they don't, then it's like, okay, that's great that you're creating, but it's a lottery in a lot of regard, because you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to hit the jackpot, right? But if you can better predict that, if you add these elements in it, either through AI and a data analyst or both, then it's like, okay, here's some foundational things that you can actually have in your content to make it the better script or make it the better type of retention. And I think the creators that use it is going to, and are one with it, are going to make better content, because it's connecting with people in a way that is predictable. And if you're more predictable in that, I truly do believe then you can have the type of concept where the creators will be more valuable. And if they're more valuable, they're going to make more money. And as they make more money, they're actually growing their audience bigger because it's connecting with people. And it's just kind of this perpetual thing. It's a virtual snowball. It just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, in that realm.
Yeah,
but I think every production house.
Oh yeah. Every production house will need a data scientist, because you have to take out all the guesswork possible. And that doesn't mean that you're going to limit creativity. If anything, it's going to make it so you can better optimize and scale creativity. One focus that our data science team has really been excited about is understanding the life cycle of a production and of a series. So yes, we want to be able to predict how many views or impressions it's going to get in the first 7 days or the first 30 days. But now we're going much deeper, and we're thinking, okay, what's going to happen to season 1 when season 2 is announced and when season 2 launches? And what's so exciting is that there's so much data out there where you can do that. And we can predict, okay, now that season 2 is coming, all the work we did with season 1 is going to have a long tail, lasting impact, where there's going to be another peak, another spike. And we use Bayesian modeling to be able to figure out, okay, it's going to at least be this much or at most this amount. And it's amazing that this type of stuff is happening, because it's always been there. Just no one's put the resources and have really invested in innovation. And it's going to be that times 1,000 soon of what is going to be possible. We also, so one of our head research data scientists is a neuroscientist, and literally all day, every day, figuring out how to better contextualize the data, specifically video, where, okay, what happened? What were the features and factors that happened in this time frame that made it so there was more impact, whether it's on views generated, on engagement, or on conversions? If there was a format where conversions could be measured, and we're just barely getting to the beginning of this, and everyone's trying to figure this out. But the reason why there's been so many companies the big platforms and a lot of the huge tech businesses, no one has really validated that the quality is from within the content and within the creative. And so you have to look at it differently. And I think us as a human race, we're just barely getting started, and it's going to not make it so we just better understand what content can do and what we can do to benefit and monetize that content, but it's also going to help us better understand humanity and the earth, because art preserves culture, preserves history, and us understanding art better and the science behind it is, I think, going to level our entire human race and our planet up on what could potentially happen in the future. Sorry, I try not to go on those tangents that often.
No. I think it's very relevant. I think the biggest thing is this is a business. And if you have a choice to have data and make data-driven decisions on how to improve your content versus, hey, I have a good idea, where's the industry going to go? And then two, for those content creators that are coming on, and just to emphasize your point, Ricky, is it's going to elevate where it connects with people deeper. And that's where I remember the moment that I was sitting in the movie theater and watched Empire Strikes Back, which is the best movie of all time, by the way. But it's just like, I remember that. And I can remember feeling that. And it connected with me deeper. And that's why not only am I a Star Wars fan, but all my kids are Star Wars nuts. Right. And it's because of that moment. And I think those moments will happen more frequently with things that we're passionate about, because these creators are looking at all aspects of their art. And one of the aspects of their art is better storytelling. Well, why are they going to discount data that's going to help predict that what they're trying to accomplish will connect even deeper with humanity? And that's where that art form is going to be amplified, is because we have more data points.
That's fantastic. I think that what you guys are pointing out in the whole AI data of it is to not be afraid, especially new filmmakers, new producers. Don't be afraid of it, because it might be the thing that gives you a leg up to get your first hit. And then you can innovate after that. I think some people are afraid of data because they're feeling, like you said earlier, Ricky, it's stopping the creativity. But I think, like you said, what it does is it actually frees you up to have this area to play in where it's a little bit more predictable in terms of, I'm going to actually be able to make my next movie, not just a one-off. And for me, Derral, there's nothing better as a producer than hearing that an audience member or members, or thousands of them or hundreds of thousands of them, have been moved by a piece of content. And I think that's certainly why Morgan and I make film. And if there's any way to help us make our decisions better and make our content hit at the heart of humanity in a better way, then we're gonna mine for that data. And Ricky, I'm coming to you for all the data you're talking about, because it'll also help make our deals, because our deals are kind of based on old deals in the past, and we now need to start looking at data and figuring out how to negotiate our deals for the future.
Absolutely. No, that all makes sense. And one thing I really want to ask you, as we need to start wrapping this up, well, actually, there's two questions, and Derral might have another question as well. He's usually better at this wrap-up part. One, what are you the most excited about in the industry? Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be data or technology, but like, what is something that is just really sticking out that's, you're just really passionate about? And then two, what are you watching right now? I think a lot of people are interested of, like, from a creator's perspective, what are they enjoying and what are they binge watching if if you have the time to do that?
Yeah. Which one should I take first?
Let's do what you're watching right now, and then okay, the things that you're the most passionate about.
Let's see. I think streaming. My company tried to get me to watch it for a long time. Ted Lasso on Apple. I just thought it was so innovative, so different, so interesting. I loved it.
Awesome.
Yeah. The Queen's Gambit. Scott Frank's direction of that just brought me into this world that I never thought I like chess, but I was in it. I thought it was amazing.
Did you go out and buy a chessboard?
I have like 3 of them here. So now I'm like looking at them.
All I know, it made a lot of YouTubers a lot of big money now, because chess is a really big vertical on YouTube right now, because everyone's interested in it to up their game. It's crazy. And I think chess.com, I would love to see their numbers, because I think the amount of sponsorship or the subscriptions went up by 10x because of everything that's going on.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm a big fan of Bridgerton, like all the time. Happy. That's Netflix, I think. And what Euphoria on HBO, Insecure on HBO. There's so much great content coming from unique voices that I'm just thrilled about. Morgan and I have been all about diversity in storytelling and in who we see on the screen, and the fact that our business is now seeing it as a business, and it's good business to do that, is just music to our ears. We had a project on our slate for over 20 years that we've been trying to get set up. You know, and when you have Morgan Freeman, you think, oh, you're going to get this set up. We have now sold it to a big giant streamer because it is now something that's seen as, oh, this could be something that people will watch. So I'm excited about where we are in the business, because it's a time when unique voices from unique perspectives. I mean, Morgan's an African-American man. I'm a female in this business, which we used to be unicorns and now we're not. And I'm so thrilled that we're starting to hear now from producers, writers, and directors of all sorts that we can start getting into worlds that we might not know. It's really exciting for me.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much. Derral, anything to add?
No, I think we've hit it. Anyone that's going to invent the blockchain system to do what we talked about here is going to be very rich. I can tell you that right now. They'll get acquired quick.
Right, well,
I agree.
Thank you, Lori, so much for joining us. We'd love to have you again. This was a lot of fun to geek out, and it's fun when we have guests come on that love thinking about the future and data like you. And so, thank you so much. We really appreciate you, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Derral. Thank you, Ricky. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
All right. And thank you, everybody else, for jumping on to this podcast or this live stream or however you're watching it. Make sure you follow us. You know what to do. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.